The sentence struck me harder than any blown deadline or midnight email ever had. Your clearance is not recognized. I stood in front of the frosted glass entry to the Horizon Analytics Executive Strategy Chamber, my chamber, blinking at the small red light that pulsed on the scanner. Each flash matched the rising heat in my face, as if the device itself mocked my presence. Behind me, the receptionist shifted in her seat with exaggerated interest in her keyboard, while the uniformed security officer lingered 3 steps away, ready to intervene with whatever script they trained him to recite when an employee suddenly became a problem. Inside that room, which smelled like mahogany polish and inflated egos, sat a proposal valued at just over $300 million, the Monarch Expansion Initiative. I had guided it from conceptual sketches to collaborative drafts to precision-engineered models capable of transforming our entire market footprint. I had nurtured it, defended it, molded it through 2 reorganizations, one federal compliance audit, and a disastrous software migration that almost derailed the whole division. And yet, I was locked out. 10 years. That was how long I had been the firm-wide fixer. 10 years of smoothing tension in cross-functional teams, translating statutory jargon into language the board could digest, and designing operational frameworks that saved the company from drowning in its own mismanagement more times than anyone cared to admit. I had built more foundations than I had received credit for. I did not think outside of the box. I reconstructed the box and insulated it with logic so strong that no one bothered to question how fragile their own authority really was. But none of that mattered to the little red light that blinked with merciless consistency. My stomach tightened as I stepped back. I had received no notice of any room access changes, no calendar alert, no internal memo, no heads up from senior leadership. I had prepared 3 analysis portfolios, 2 layered briefing sequences, and a structured proposal flow, timed down to the minute. I knew every detail of Monarch more intimately than I knew my own vacation days, which I had not taken in 3 years. So, why, on the most critical morning of my career, was I standing outside like a confused intern who had wandered onto the wrong floor? Through the transparent panel, I saw him, Bryson Hale, the chief executive officer's favored protege. He sat confidently in my chair, his trimmed beard aligned with geometric accuracy, and his smile stretched wide as if the whole deal were a party thrown in his honor. He gestured dramatically at the display behind him, cycling through slides I recognized instantly, slides I had created, slides he had no part in developing. He looked like a man who believed his own charm could substitute for expertise, knowledge, and preparation. The type who used cologne as character and buzzwords as strategy. The type the executive suite adored because he reminded them of themselves. I did not knock. I did not demand entry. I walked away quietly, each step carrying the heavy knowledge that something deliberate had been set in motion. I returned to my desk and sat in the ergonomic chair I had purchased myself after the finance department delayed approval for 9 months. I opened the internal scheduling panel. The meeting had been reclassified as executive tier only. No notification, no message from leadership. The update had been buried deep in the metadata, where only a meticulous eye would catch it. My name was still listed as lead architect, still noted as primary liaison for Monarch. But I was not in the room. This was not an oversight. Bryson had been inching toward the Monarch initiative for months. He hovered in my status huddles uninvited, interjecting with redundant questions that added no value. He forwarded my emails to the C-suite with little summaries written as if he were the mastermind behind them. The only ideas he had contributed were phrases like iterative synergy and holistic vertical unification. Once, he suggested renaming our partnership interface to Consumer Immersion Passage. Then, he applauded himself. I had smiled, taken notes, and kept working. That was how people like me survived in environments built to spotlight superficial brilliance and silence consistent excellence. I had not always felt invisible. When I first joined Horizon Analytics, the company was messy but promising, a place where someone like me could carve a real legacy. I had drafted governance models during storms, lived on black coffee and half-charged laptops during merger chaos, and trained two entire departments when leadership forgot to schedule instructors. I did not chase recognition. I chased results. Then Bryson arrived. Polished, well-connected, and armed with a business degree that came with more privilege than skill. His uncle was on the board, a fact he never shared openly but made sure everyone sensed. Leadership adored him. HR scheduled panel appearances for him. Communications treated him like a brand mascot. I learned early that Bryson was not after excellence. He was after ownership. Of anything. Of everything. Of Monarch. I had not confronted him. I simply documented, observed, strategized, and 2 weeks before the scanner denied my badge, I had found exactly what I needed. Buried deep in an old partnership contract from the early days of my career was a clause I had written during a chaotic season when half the legal team was out sick and the rest were arguing over procedural overlaps. The document covered risk protocols during collaborative ventures. Clause 12.6.3. I reread it, then reread it again, and I smiled. 3 days after the lockout, I received a calendar invite with no description. The title read, Alignment Dialogue. A smiling face emoji sat at the end of the subject line as if someone wanted to soften the blow. I entered the small room reserved for awkward conversations and corporate ambushes. The buzzing fluorescent light flickered overhead. Bryson sat at the table, his symmetrical smile polished, while the chief executive officer wore his signature expression of performative concern. A third person was present. A woman I did not recognize. She wore a neutral suit and clutched a notepad like it was both shield and weapon. Monica, Bryson said cheerfully, acting as if we were long-lost college friends meeting for brunch. We wanted to touch base about the Monarch initiative and talk about new workflow direction. Ah, there it was. The CEO nodded, speaking in vague corporate comfort phrases. You have been truly extraordinary. No one questions your value. I braced internally. Nothing good ever followed words like that. Bryson leaned forward. We are finalizing a team restructuring plan after Monarch. New energy, fresh alignment. You know how it is. Your foundational work is amazing, but we feel it might be best for you to support the transition from a more behind-the-scenes vantage point. Translation: we are taking everything you built and pushing you out of the spotlight. I kept my voice level. Could you define behind the scenes? Not a demotion, the CEO insisted. Just strategic realignment. Bryson is offering elevated cross-functional agility. You provide structural excellence. Together, that creates balance. He said balance like a priest saying a blessing. Bryson nodded meaningfully. It is a win for everyone. I lead external communication. You maintain the bones. We stay in our lanes. I looked at the woman with the notepad. She had not written a single line, but her eyes followed every detail of my expression. Has this already been approved? I asked. Nothing is finalized, Bryson said, which meant it had been finalized last week. I left the room without protest. When I reached my desk, an HR notification blinked on my screen. Performance correction pathway. Effective immediately. 4 pages of exaggerated accusations describing me as rigid, overly assertive, lacking collaborative warmth. Not one mention of the $1 million proposal I had shepherded for a year. No recognition of the countless late nights, crisis interventions, and frameworks I had designed. Just a neat little narrative designed to justify pushing me out. My favorite line recommended that I shadow Bryson during client meetings to learn adaptive tone modulation. I did not cry. I did not plead. I printed the pathway, slid it into a red folder, and placed it next to a much older folder labeled Clause. I opened the older folder and looked at my notes from years ago. Clause 12.6.3 of the Horizon Monarch Collaboration Charter. In the event of departmental or employment separation during active client negotiation, full contractual signatory authority remains vested in the original strategic lead until dual-party authorization transfers that authority in writing. Layman terms, if they fired me, they still needed me. They could push me out of meetings. They could smear my performance. They could deactivate my badge. But they could not finalize Monarch without me. I began my preparation, deliberate, quiet, surgical. The next morning, I brought Bryson his favorite latte with a bright smile drawn on the lid. He accepted it with the enthusiasm of a child receiving a gold star. He had no idea the floor beneath him had already cracked. He had no idea the structure under his polished shoes had already begun to erode. That day, I became the image of compliance. I attended every coaching session the performance plan required. I took notes in a Horizon-branded notebook with motivational phrases printed along the margins. I nodded earnestly while a junior talent specialist half my age explained how I could soften my tone to make upper leadership more comfortable. I rehearsed response cues in fake scenarios where I played the role of an anxious product owner and Bryson played the role of calm visionary. Inside, a different script ran. I spent my lunch breaks in the archival corner of the internal system, downloading material that everyone else had forgotten existed. Legacy protocols, governance addendums, early drafts of collaboration standards from before Horizon Analytics merged with the regional insight firm that almost dragged us under. I kept returning to one document, the Horizon Monarch Collaboration Charter, signed years ago when Aurora Meridian Group first became a long-range partner. Clause 12.6.3. Joint Strategic Continuity. At the time I wrote it, the company nearly imploded after a sudden leadership reshuffle left a major contract stuck without a clear sign-off owner. A senior director left in the middle of a negotiating cycle, and leadership assumed any vice president could sign. The client disagreed and threatened litigation. I stayed awake 3 nights in a row rewriting continuity language until both legal teams finally approved something that satisfied everyone. That something was Clause 12.6.3. Now it sat like a sleeping engine in the middle of the Monarch Charter, quiet and fully fueled. I printed the clause with all associated footnotes and tucked the pages into a slim black folder. I highlighted every sentence, not for myself, but for the next person who would need to understand the implications clearly. The following week, I scheduled a brief meeting with one of the senior attorneys who still remembered the early merger chaos. Her name was Latrice Moore. She had the kind of steady gaze that made people confess before she asked any questions. We met in the break room under the excuse of clarifying archived language related to third-party oversight. In other words, I asked her to look at something without forcing either of us to acknowledge why. I slid the printed pages across the table. Latrice adjusted her glasses and scanned the text. When she reached the highlighted paragraph, her lips parted slightly. "You drafted this," she said. "Yes. During the integration season when everyone argued about who could sign what." Her eyes moved through the annotations I had added in the margins, references to prior cases, examples of how authority passed or failed to pass during leadership disruptions. She tapped the date at the top of the charter, then glanced at me. "You realize this still governs Monarch with Aurora Meridian," she said. "I do. And you are listed as original strategic lead in the charter." "Correct." Latrice exhaled softly. "In the event of departmental or employment separation during active negotiation," she read aloud, "full signatory authority remains vested in the original strategic lead until both parties authorize a new lead in writing." She looked up. If Horizon pushes you out while Monarch is still open, they cannot close without you. I raised my coffee cup in a small toast. That is my understanding. She leaned back, studying me with a mixture of concern and respect. What is your plan? She asked. I am reading old documents, I replied, catching up on history. We both knew that statement carried more weight than the casual tone suggested. Later that afternoon, Bryson forwarded his revised version of the Monarch pitch deck with a subject line that read, "Quick polish." He asked for any feedback I had time to provide. The deck was a mess. He had inserted theatrical phrases and removed critical risk mitigation slides. He recast carefully measured commitments as grand promises that ignored real constraints. He had renamed our escalation framework the momentum ladder. I sent one single note. Slide 14 may cause concern from the Aurora Meridian Risk Group. Suggest changing aggressive recovery to collaborative recalibration. Within minutes, he replied, "Love it. You are a real team anchor." The words did not sting. They simply confirmed what I already knew. That night, I crafted the envelope. I printed a formal resignation letter on clean stationery, dated and signed, with a witness acknowledgement from a notary I had trusted for years. I printed clause 12.6.3 and my annotated summary. I attached an email confirmation from the year the charter went into effect, verifying that both Horizon Analytics leadership and Aurora Meridian Council had approved the wording without modification. No theatrics, no accusations, just precise documentation. I sealed the papers in a thick cream envelope and placed it in the locked drawer of my desk. I did not race to HR. I did not warn anyone. I waited. The Monarch Progress Review with Aurora Meridian arrived at the end of the quarter. That meeting had always been my arena. I had designed the review cadence, trained the analysts, and written every prior status brief sent to their leadership. Now Bryson wanted the spotlight. We joined the video conference from a glass room on the 20th floor. I sat to his left, with a slim binder open, prepared to speak when appropriate. Aurora Meridian filled the screen. Their chief operations director, a sharp woman named Raquel Wynn, sat in the center. To her right, their in-house counsel, a man named Devin Price, scrolled through his tablet. Their faces were composed, professional, observant. I opened with a concise timeline summary. In the past quarter, we have completed 3 of the 5 foundational integration stages. Data harmonization is on schedule, model validation is ahead by 2 weeks, and the only outstanding approvals relate to regional pilot scaling. Our next focus is aligning governance models with your internal oversight teams to ensure no disruption during expansion. I had only reached my second slide when Bryson raised his hand slightly, like a teacher ready to interrupt a student. "If I can jump in," he said, resting his elbow on the table with casual authority. "What Monica means is that we have decided to reframe the entire rollout with a more dynamic energy." He turned to the camera. "Aurora Meridian will see a shift from cautious pacing to bold acceleration. We intend to drive full implementation with what we call the Monarch Surge, compressing review stages so you feel results sooner." Raquel did not blink, but her head tilted by a fraction. "That is not the cadence we agreed upon," she said. Bryson laughed lightly, a show of easy confidence. "True, on paper the original schedule is more measured. However, leadership believes the market is ripe for faster execution, and we believe Aurora Meridian wants to lead, not trail." "Faster execution requires more risk," Devin said. "Our regulators already monitor this partnership closely." "Risk is an opportunity," Bryson replied. "Our internal teams will handle the details." He continued for 20 minutes. He promised deliverables I knew we could not legally guarantee. He minimized the importance of certain compliance thresholds, describing them as minor checkpoints. He reframed our cautious contingency paths as optional extras. Once, he referred to our carefully negotiated fallback process as a nice safety blanket. Every sentence he spoke added pressure, not only on us, but on the client who would now need to untangle his confident exaggerations. I considered interrupting. My pulse pounded against the notebook page under my hand. I kept my face neutral. When he finally paused for air, Raquel looked directly into the camera. "Monica," she said, "is this your recommendation?" I met her gaze. Our original plan was designed to protect both organizations from regulatory exposure and operational instability. Any significant compression of review stages will increase pressure on your internal control teams. "So your documentation does not match this new surge version?" Devin asked. "It does not," I said. Bryson laughed again. "Transition is always messy. That is why leadership is stepping in to provide more visionary oversight." The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. After the call ended, Bryson clapped his hands together with bright satisfaction. "That went well," he said. "We will work on aligning your talking points with the new direction." I closed my notebook slowly. Of course. The next morning, a new calendar invitation appeared in my inbox. Human Resources Review Conversation. No emoji this time. The room they chose was smaller than the alignment chamber, with no windows and a table that always felt slightly sticky no matter how often someone wiped it down. The talent partner from the earlier session sat with her laptop open. Beside her, a regional HR manager I barely knew read from a printed sheet with steady monotone. "Monica Harris," she began, "due to ongoing concerns regarding communication style, failure to demonstrate adaptive collaboration, and disruption of leadership alignment, Horizon Analytics will end your employment effective immediately." The words flowed in a practiced pace, as if she had recited similar phrases many times before. An information technology representative stood near the door, hand resting on a canvas case ready to receive my laptop. I nodded once. "Understood." They asked for my badge. The moment it touched the table, the nearby security system chimed softly. I knew that somewhere, a system flag marked my access as inactive. My email had likely already locked. I walked back to my desk with a cardboard box they handed me, the universal symbol for corporate exile. I placed my plants inside, my pen set, and the slim stack of notebooks that contained margins filled with years of uncredited ideas. Colleagues watched from behind their screens, pretending to work while their eyes followed my movements. As I zipped my bag, someone approached. It was Latrice. She looked at the box, then at my badge, now clipped uselessly to the edge of the desk. "They moved fast," she said quietly. "They always move fast when they believe the target is weak," I replied. I reached into my drawer and pulled out the cream envelope. Its weight felt different now. Denser. Settled. "Latrice," I said, holding it out. "This is for the legal archive. Continuity reference." She frowned slightly but accepted it. "What is inside?" "A formal resignation dated before termination, a copy of Clause 12.6.3 from the Horizon Monarch Collaboration Charter, annotated support material." Her eyes sharpened. "You resigned before they fired you." "Correct. So internal records will show unsupported termination after resignation." "Yes. And the charter will show that the only person cleared to sign Monarch for Horizon remains me, until both sides agree otherwise in writing." Latrice looked down at the envelope like it contained a live wire. This could freeze the entire Monarch initiative. Her voice held no excitement, only sober realization. "It will not freeze anything," I said. "It will simply force everyone to honor the contract they signed." She nodded once, understanding. "I will log it with the timestamp intact." "Thank you." I left the building without scene or speech. No final declaration in the lobby. No handwritten message on the whiteboard near the break room. Just quiet steps, a box of belongings, and a mind that had already shifted into the next phase. Out on the street, the air felt different. The tall, mirrored windows of Horizon reflected a version of me that no longer belonged to the structure behind the glass. Good. From that moment forward, I intended to operate from outside the walls they believed gave them total control. Because they had just cast out the one person their largest initiative could not afford to lose. I did not answer the first call that came in, or the second, or the fifth. They poured into my phone in frantic waves, like someone had knocked over a hornet's nest inside the executive wing. Messages from the receptionist, from Bryson's assistant, from the strategic operations coordinator, from an unknown number I knew belonged to the CEO. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand in my cousin Lena's guest room and let the screen light up without acknowledgement. For the first time in years, I allowed myself silence. Lena lived on the other side of the city in a quiet neighborhood, where people walked their dogs at sunrise and waved at neighbors from across the street. Her spare room was small but peaceful, with soft gray walls and wide blinds that shut out the world completely. She brought me sweet tea and asked no questions. She knew me well enough to understand that when I was ready to talk, I would. But I did not come there to talk. I came there to watch. By the second day after my departure, slow ripples of disruption had begun moving across Horizon Analytics like cracks forming in ice. Someone from finance left a voicemail asking whether I had taken the updated budget distribution document home by accident. Someone from data modeling sent 2 emails asking if I still had access to the version control platform. I did not reply. They would eventually discover that the access hierarchy I designed required a live strategic lead for the Monarch Initiative to authorize certain internal branches. Without a recognized lead, everything beyond Stage 3 was locked. Aurora Meridian began asking questions too. I knew because my closest colleague who still worked in the analytics division, a man named Andre who had always warned me about trusting leadership blindly, forwarded me a message through an encrypted channel. He did not attach commentary, only the transcript from a morning call between Horizon and Aurora Meridian. In the transcript, Aurora Meridian's counsel asked a simple question. Has Monica been reassigned or has she separated from the company? Bryson's assistant responded. She transitioned during the restructuring phase. Was an authorization update submitted per clause 12.6.3? There was a long pause in the transcript. Finally, someone typed, "We are preparing documentation." The counsel replied, "Until we receive formal authorization signed by both parties, we consider the strategic lead unchanged." Andre sent no additional context. He did not need to. The gears inside Horizon Analytics were grinding against themselves. I shut off the phone and opened my laptop. Not the company device they had reclaimed. My own. On it was a folder with all the public-facing models I had presented at conferences. Not internal documents, not proprietary files, just my original work. Tools I had built long before Horizon ever hired me. I skimmed through them for an hour, not to revise, not to reminisce, to remind myself that my value had never depended on the company that thought it could erase me. By the end of the week, my name had begun circulating again, not among the employees who wanted to know why I had suddenly disappeared, not among the managers trying to contain rumor, but among the leadership of Aurora Meridian. On Thursday evening, a message appeared in my personal email. From Raquel Wynn. Subject: Request for informal conversation. Her email was brief. Monica, I understand you are no longer with Horizon Analytics. Before we proceed with any contract adjustments, I would appreciate an informal discussion regarding earlier design rationale behind the Monarch Initiative. No obligations, no commitments. Just clarity. If you are willing, my team will arrange a neutral location. Below her signature was a single line. This is not a request from Horizon. I read the email 3 times. Then I replied with a single sentence, I am available. 2 days later, I arrived at a quiet co-working space located between both of our districts. No company logos, no branding. Just a simple conference room with ceramic mugs, a whiteboard, and tall windows overlooking a quiet street. Raquel sat at the head of the table. Devin, their counsel, sat at her side. Another member of their strategy team, a young woman named Charisse, typed notes quietly. Raquel gestured for me to sit. Thank you for meeting with us, she said. This is an informal conversation, Devin added. Nothing will be recorded beyond our internal summaries. I understand. Raquel folded her hands on the table. We have noticed inconsistencies between the plan we approved and the direction Horizon now describes. We would like to confirm whether our original understanding of Monarch is still technically viable. I gave crisp, clean answers, not because I wanted to help Horizon, but because Monarch had been designed carefully, thoughtfully, and ethically. I would not allow Bryson's careless showmanship to warp its intent. I explained why the data harmonization timetable could not safely be shortened. I explained the risk layers built into the regional expansion model. I explained why our fallback structure existed and what it would prevent. I clarified without revealing anything confidential. Raquel listened with sharp focus. You designed this to stabilize two organizations during a rapid shift, she said. Correct. And Horizon now suggests removing the stabilizers to accelerate optics, Devin added. I allowed myself a small exhale. That is my impression. Raquel nodded slowly. Thank you. That is all we needed today. There was no job offer, no proposal, no attempt to recruit me, only respect. The kind leadership at Horizon had lost long ago. As I stood to leave, Raquel raised one more question. Did Horizon request your signature after your departure? No. Did you sign anything transferring your authority on Monarch? No. She nodded once. Understood. The following Monday morning, Horizon Analytics walked straight into the consequence. According to Andre, the weekly executive meeting began with the CEO attempting a calm review of minor updates. But halfway through the agenda, his assistant entered the room and handed him a printed document with a pale expression. The CEO scanned the page. His face drained. Then he read aloud the email from Aurora Meridian. Until Horizon Analytics provides updated authorization per clause 12.6.3, Aurora Meridian will pause all negotiations and suspend Phase 4 approvals. Current strategic lead remains unchanged. The boardroom fell silent. Bryson tried speaking first. Pause is not freeze, we can reassure them. But the CFO cut him off. The deliverables schedule binds our revenue projections. If Phase 4 does not execute next quarter, we lose half the projected growth. The CEO turned to legal. Can we bypass the clause? Latrice, professionalism woven through every word, answered with unwavering clarity. No. Clause 12.6.3 is still active. Authority remains with the original lead until both sides approve transition. Bryson waved his hand dismissively. She is gone. She cannot lead anything. She resigned before termination, Latrice said. Legally, the departure is unresolved, and she did not authorize transfer. The CEO clenched his fists. So what are you saying? I am saying, Latrice replied, that the only person who can sign Monarch is not in this building. Andre later told me there was a long, deep silence, the kind that cracks through confidence, the kind that makes every person in the room understand they have made a mistake too large to disguise. The CEO finally whispered, "We need Monica." Not because they valued me, but because they had no choice. 2 hours later, they attempted to call me again. I ignored it. 3 hours after that, the CEO sent an email asking me to join an emergency alignment meeting. I ignored that too. Around noon, Bryson sent a message through a mutual colleague. The message simply said, "We need your insight." This is urgent. I let my phone ring until it timed out. I was not cruel. I was patient. And patience is its own form of power. That evening, as I sat on Lena's porch with a mug of chamomile tea, a final message arrived. Not from Horizon, from Raquel. It contained no greeting, no closing, only one line. Horizon attempted to bypass you. We denied the request. I felt no triumph, no rush of victory, only calm certainty, because this was the natural result of arrogance colliding with accountability. And accountability was a language Horizon had long forgotten how to speak. By the end of that week, Horizon Analytics resembled a machine that had been kicked into motion without a single bolt tightened. Every department felt the tension. Executives whispered in hallways with the urgency of people trying to stitch a sinking ship with dental floss. Team leads scheduled meetings without agendas. Project coordinators updated dashboards that no longer reflected reality. No one said my name out loud, but they all felt it. On Friday morning, Lena knocked on my door holding a plate of pancakes. "You look like someone who is about to dismantle a corporate empire from a sofa," she said. "I am doing nothing," I said, which was entirely true. The empire was dismantling itself. I spent the rest of the weekend in quiet observation. I read, I walked, I slept, and every so often I checked my phone just long enough to see the unseen tidal wave rising behind Horizon. Saturday afternoon brought a long message from Andre. He wrote, "Monica, internal is in chaos. Leadership met for 7 hours today. They tried to draft a workaround protocol, but it violates 3 sections of the charter. Legal rejected it. They want to issue a new authorization, but Aurora Meridian insists they will only accept it after you acknowledge transfer. They asked if you would join virtually for alignment Monday. Do not reply. They are desperate. Andre." He added nothing else. I appreciated that. He respected my silence. Then came the unexpected. Sunday morning at 10:30, I received a LinkedIn message from someone I had not spoken to since year 2 of my career. Her name was Dr. Samira Deaton. She had been the last director of integration before stepping away to launch her own consulting firm. She was brilliant in the kind of way that frightened executives because she never softened her intelligence to comfort their insecurities. She had once told me that corporate structures crumble the moment someone stops believing they are invincible. Her message was simple. "Monica, Aurora speaks highly of you. I heard what happened. If you ever want to build something that honors your work instead of consuming it, call me. No pressure, no obligation, just possibility. Samira." The message felt like an open door waiting quietly in the background while I stood in a burning hallway. I did not respond. Not yet. On Monday morning, Horizon Analytics initiated its full panic spiral. This time, they did not hide it. Andre sent a screenshot of the morning executive huddle. The screenshot captured the digital meeting summary posted to the internal dashboard. Monarch Initiative status: red. Critical delays. No authorized signatory recognized by Aurora Meridian. All Phase 4 operations paused indefinitely. Under that summary was a note from the CFO to the CEO. "We cannot forecast Q3 without clarity. Resolve this with Harris immediately." Bryson posted soon after, attempting to redirect blame. He claimed Aurora Meridian had misunderstood. He claimed operational teams had failed to communicate. He claimed the charter language was outdated. Latrice replied to his comments with a single message: "The charter is binding." By noon, I had received 4 emails from the CEO. One long, polite, one short, urgent, one formal, sent through the executive coordinator. One written at 2 in the morning with the desperate tone of a man watching every assurance he ever made to the board collapse. I let all 4 sit unanswered. By late afternoon, Horizon finally realized silence was its own response. That evening, I received a final message from the CEO. It read, "Monica, We acknowledge that your authority under the Monarch Charter remains active. We respectfully request your participation in an emergency session with Aurora Meridian to align signatory transition. We are prepared to discuss any terms you require. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Leon. Any terms I require. The phrase was not an apology. Apologies are confessions. This was a negotiation shaped by fear. I closed the email and set my laptop aside. The street outside Lena's house was quiet. The porch light cast soft gold across the railing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then twice. A thought settled into my chest with calm certainty. They had never wanted me at the table. Now they could not even open the table without me. But I still was not ready to respond. Not because I intended to punish them, but because I needed clarity on my own path before letting their panic pull me backward. The next morning, I received another message from Samira. This time it read, Monica, I am in town this week. If you want to talk possibilities, lunch is on me. No pressure. S. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Possibilities. I had spent 10 years compressing myself to fit inside a system that demanded invisibility from anyone who carried quiet competence instead of loud entitlement. I had burned myself for people who held lighters behind their backs. I had built frameworks that others claimed. I had poured brilliance into rooms where only noise was rewarded. And yet something inside me hesitated. Not because I wanted Horizon back, but because Monarch had been mine. Not theirs, not Bryson's, mine. What would happen to it if I let it die with them? I considered this as I walked to the kitchen and brewed a cup of coffee. Lena sat at the counter reading a magazine. She looked up. They still blowing up your phone? They are? I said. She closed the magazine and leaned forward. You already won, baby. But the question is, what do you want next? Not what they want. Not what Aurora wants. Not what anyone expects. You. I took a slow sip of coffee. I do not know yet. Then stop letting them rush you. Make your choice when you ready, not when they scared. She was right. And still, I knew I could not stay silent forever. Not because Horizon deserved a response, but because Monarch deserved a future beyond their incompetence. I sent 2 messages that afternoon, one to Andre. I am safe. Thank you. Do not send anything further for now. And the second to Samira. Lunch works. Wednesday. That was all. On Wednesday, I arrived early at the small restaurant Samira had chosen. It was a quiet Mediterranean place on the east side of town, decorated with warm colors and murals of stone archways. She sat by a window, her posture straight, her expression calm and knowing. Monica, she said with a smile, you look lighter. I feel suspended, I replied. She nodded. Then let us unsuspend you. We talked for over an hour. Not about Monarch, not about Horizon, about work. Real work. Work that mattered. Work that built futures rather than props for executives to stand on. Samira told me everything she had built in the years since she left, a consultancy that centered ethical analytics leadership, a network of firms looking for people who understood both the architecture of complex systems and the humanity behind decisions. And Monarch, she finally said, is the kind of architecture people will fight over, but not everyone who fights deserves it. I exhaled slowly. What do you want me to do? I want you to think beyond Horizon, she said. If you were free, truly free, what direction would you choose? I can help you expand that, if you want. If not, I will support you either way. It was not a pitch. It was an offering. When we finished lunch, she placed her card on the table. Take your time, she said. But not too much. People who diminish you do not get to define your future. I walked out into the late afternoon sun feeling something I had not felt in years. Possibility. The next morning, Horizon tried again. This time they offered something they had sworn they would never consider: a reinstatement, full title restoration, immediate return, retroactive recognition on Monarch, a seat at the strategy table, with a final line that revealed everything. "We cannot proceed without your cooperation." I stared at the message for a long time. And for the first time since the badge scanner blinked red, I smiled. Not because Horizon finally respected me, but because they finally understood the cost of not respecting me. And still, I did not answer. I needed one more thing: clarity. On a Friday morning full of soft clouds and slow breezes, I walked 3 blocks to a quiet bench near a small pond. I sat there watching ducks drift in uneven circles, the water rippling with patterns I could not predict. I thought of the Monarch Initiative. I thought of the 10 years I had given Horizon. I thought of Clause 12.6.3 sitting like a beacon in a sea of negligence. I thought of the way Aurora Meridian's tone had changed when they realized what I had designed. I thought of Samira's steady gaze across the restaurant table. And I realized something with absolute certainty. Horizon Analytics did not deserve Monarch, and they no longer deserved me. What happened next would not be a return. It would be a reckoning. The following Monday, Horizon Analytics held what Andre later described as the most strained emergency session in the company's recent history. 30 people squeezed into the executive chamber, all wearing the same expression: a mixture of anxiety, frustration, and barely disguised dread. They expected me to walk through their doors. They expected me to fold. They expected desperation. Instead, I was sitting at a library 2 miles away, sunlight spilling across the study table as I flipped through a notebook filled with ideas I had never dared to explore while trapped inside Horizon's structure. My phone vibrated. A single text from Andre: "Meeting is getting ugly." I turned the device face down and exhaled slowly. Ugly was the first step toward truth. Because now Horizon's leadership could no longer hide behind performance narratives or careful manipulation. They had to face the consequences of their own arrogance. At 11:26 a.m., the CEO sent me an email marked urgent priority. "Monica, please join the call at noon. Aurora Meridian is requesting your presence. We need to resolve signatory authorization today. Leon." I read it once and closed it. At 11:58, a new email arrived. This one came from Raquel Wynn. "Monica, we will not participate in any authorization transition without your direct acknowledgement. Please notify us privately whether you intend to engage." R. This email I read twice. Then I opened my calendar. And I made a decision. There comes a moment in every professional life when you choose whether to continue being the invisible infrastructure or become the undeniable force. I had spent years as the former, constructing, stabilizing, supporting. Now I would be the latter. I sent Raquel a brief reply. "I will join the call for 30 minutes. No more." 5 minutes later, she replied simply, "Understood." At the top of the hour, I clicked the meeting link. The screen filled instantly with faces. Some shocked, some relieved, some pale with the kind of fear only corporate miscalculations can produce. Bryson shifted in his seat with the restless guilt of a man who can feel consequences breathing down his neck. The CEO leaned forward as if proximity could soften the damage already done. "Monica," he said, "thank you for joining." I did not respond verbally, only nodded once. Raquel sat at the center of her company's panel, posture straight, expression unreadable. Devin sat beside her, ready with documentation. This time, I did not join from Horizon's building. I joined as myself, neutral, independent, unbound. Raquel spoke first. "We are here to clarify the status of the Monarch Initiative and determine next steps regarding signatory authority." A subtle tension entered the air. The CEO attempted diplomacy. We greatly appreciate your willingness to help us restore continuity, Monica. Our collective goal is ensuring the partnership proceeds without interruption. I raised an eyebrow. Collective goal. A convenient phrase for people who only remembered teamwork when they needed someone else to clean their mess. Raquel's expression remained neutral. We will hear from Monica first. All eyes shifted toward me. I spoke calmly, slowly, every word measured. Based on the Horizon Monarch Collaboration Charter, Clause 12.6.3, signatory authority remains with the original strategic lead until both organizations acknowledge the transition in writing. Latrice nodded once, confirming. I have not acknowledged any transition, I continued. Nor was I asked to before my departure. Bryson shifted uncomfortably. So, Raquel said, per the contract, you are still the authorized signatory. Yes, I said, legally and procedurally. The CEO cleared his throat. We would like to rectify that today. We are prepared to restore your position and authorize. I raised a hand slightly. A quiet gesture, but it stopped every voice. I will not return to Horizon Analytics, I said, and I will not sign anything that presents itself as reinstatement, reconciliation, or retroactive correction. What happened cannot be undone with a title or with access. The temperature in the room dropped. Bryson opened his mouth, then closed it again, jaw tightening. The CEO forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. Monica, surely we can find— We cannot, I said flatly. I let the silence settle. Let it saturate every corner of that call. Inside that silence was every ignored contribution, every diminished idea, every moment of stolen credit, every fabricated performance narrative used to justify pushing me aside. Then I continued. However, I will authorize transition of signatory authority under one condition. They leaned in. Hope flickered across faces like wildfire. I let them wait a breath. Then, Aurora Meridian chooses the new lead. Stunned silence. Raquel blinked once as the implication sank in. Horizon could no longer choose its representative. The client would choose who they trusted. If Aurora Meridian selected someone inside Horizon, so be it. If they selected someone outside, so be it. But Horizon would no longer control the narrative. The CEO sputtered. Monica, that is— A condition, I said, not a negotiation. Raquel folded her hands thoughtfully. This aligns with our interests. We are willing to proceed under this condition. The CEO's face reddened. Horizon traditionally appoints its own leads. Tradition, Devon said calmly, does not override contract language. Bryson finally found his voice. This gives the client too much control over internal structure. Raquel turned her head slowly toward him. If Horizon wanted more control, it should have honored the architect of the initiative instead of undermining her. Bryson's face drained of color. The CEO attempted another pivot. We must at least discuss. You can, I said. But the clause stands. And the condition stands. I checked the clock at the corner of the screen. I agreed to 30 minutes. My time is up. Before anyone could interrupt, I added, Raquel, when you choose your new lead, send me written notice. I will sign the authorization transfer within 24 hours. And after that, she asked, you step back completely. Yes. The CEO's voice cracked slightly. Monica, we can still find a path for you here. There is no path, I said softly. Only a lesson. I clicked leave meeting. The screen vanished. The silence around me felt different now. Not heavy. Not tense. Clean. Lena walked in from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. You ended it, she said quietly. I ended my part of it, I corrected. The rest is theirs. I expected to feel triumph, vindication, satisfaction. Instead, all I felt was clarity. I had cut the cord they tried to bind around me, but I had done it with precision, not spite. The message notifications began almost immediately. I ignored them again. This time not out of anger, out of peace. I spent the next 24 hours in silence. No calls, no emails, no meetings. Just rest. Then, the next morning, an email arrived from Raquel. Subject: Selected lead. Monica, Aurora Meridian has evaluated all candidates. We select Dr. Samira Deaton. I exhaled in a slow wave of surprise that quickly melted into recognition. Of course. Of course it would be Samira. She was the only person who understood Monarch's architecture with the same depth and integrity I did. The only leader who would protect the initiative from becoming a trophy or a tool. The choice was perfect. Attached to the email was the authorization transfer request. I read it carefully. Then I signed. 20 minutes later, Raquel confirmed receipt. Horizon Analytics was no longer mine to rescue, or to salvage, or to carry. My part of the story was officially over. That afternoon, I received one final message. From Samira. It read, Monica, thank you for trusting me. Monarch will be handled with the care it deserves. If you are ready to talk next steps, I am here. Always. S. I closed the message gently. The bench near the pond called to me again that evening. The ducks swam in uneven circles. The breeze was light. The sky was soft. I sat there feeling something rare, something quiet, something whole, freedom. The horizon above the pond glowed with soft amber light as I sat watching the ripples move across the water. A quiet place for a quiet ending, or perhaps a beginning. The evening air carried the scent of warm earth and faint blossoms, and for the first time in months, my breathing felt easy. No tension in my shoulders, no weight pressing against my ribs, only space. Open, unclaimed, unstructured space. My phone buzzed once beside me, not insistently, not intrusively, just a single vibration, a message from Andre. It read, They announced Samira as the new Monarch lead. You should have seen Bryson's face. Leadership was furious but powerless. People here finally understand what really happened. Thank you for everything you built. I hope you do something for yourself now. I smiled faintly before powering off the phone. The world inside Horizon Analytics could collapse, rebuild, argue, deny, or rationalize. None of that mattered anymore. They were simply experiencing the consequences they had created. There is a unique stillness that follows the moment you reclaim yourself. Not a roar, not a celebration, something quieter. A recognition that the life you carried for years was never the life meant for you. I stayed on the bench until dusk thickened around the pond. Fireflies blinked along the waterline like scattered stars. The sky darkened to deep violet, and the city lights flickered awake in the distance. When I stood and walked back toward Lena's house, my steps felt different. Not lighter, more certain. Inside, Lena sat on the couch folding laundry. She looked up when I entered. How did it go? She asked. It ended. But you do not look sad. I am not, I said. I feel complete. She nodded slowly, as if she had known this outcome the moment I walked through her door the first night with a cardboard box and a silent storm in my chest. Then you can start building something real now, she said. I sat beside her, letting the peaceful rhythm of the folding soothe whatever final tension lingered. After a while, she asked, So what comes next? I considered the question seriously. Not the corporate version of the question, not the future planning version, the human version. What comes next when the old identity falls away? I had possibilities. Real ones. Not illusions crafted by people who wanted my labor, but not my presence. There was Samira's offer. A direction that promised integrity, respect, and creative freedom. A place where brilliance was cultivated, not consumed. There was also my own path, unwritten and unbounded. The Monarch Initiative had been the last chapter of my life at Horizon, a chapter that began with ambition and ended with revelation. Not the revelation that the company wronged me. I had always known that. The revelation was that I no longer needed any of them to validate the worth of my work. My work had survived without their permission, and so had I. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose rather than urgency. Sunlight spilled across the blankets. The world outside sounded soft and alive. For the first time in a decade, I did not check my inbox before getting out of bed. I made breakfast. I drank my coffee slowly. I read a book I had abandoned years ago because I had been too busy putting out fires others created. Around 10:30, I finally turned on my phone. A new message waited. From Samira. Monica, whenever you are ready, I would like to discuss an opportunity that aligns with your strengths and the vision you described years ago. You deserve the chance to build something without needing to fight for recognition at every step. Let me know when you are ready to talk. S. I stared at the message for a long, meaningful moment. Ready. Such a simple word. Such a powerful question. Was I ready? Not to return. Not to reclaim anything from Horizon, but to step entirely into a future shaped by choice, not necessity. I tapped the screen slowly, deliberately, not out of haste, but out of intention. My reply was short. I am ready. I sent it. There was no trembling in my hands, no hesitation in my breath, only a steady, growing certainty. An hour later, I met Samira at a small office she used as a temporary satellite space while in the city. The room was filled with sunlight and whiteboards, and an energy that felt alive. She greeted me warmly. Monica, she said, let us build something worthy of you. She gestured to the whiteboard. On it was a heading, Ethical Systems Advancement Initiative. Beneath it, bullet points, structure, strategy, future, impact. Everything Horizon had promised in its branding but never embodied. Is this a proposal? I asked. It is an invitation, she said. We want you to shape this with us. Full autonomy, full recognition, full respect. I pulled in a slow breath. It felt unreal, but real in the way life feels when aligned with something greater than survival. A calling rather than a job. I stepped forward and read each line carefully. Finally, I said, I accept. Samira smiled, and with those two words, the conflict that Horizon had sparked dissolved into irrelevance. What remained was purpose. What remained was direction. What remained was the truth. My value had never lived inside Horizon Analytics. It lived in me, and now I would use it fully. Days passed, then weeks. Monarch moved forward under Samira's leadership. Aurora Meridian released a statement praising its structural integrity. Horizon Analytics attempted to claim joint credit, but the industry knew the truth. The quiet kind of truth that spreads without speaking. Bryson faded into a lower role. The CEO retired early. Teams reorganized. But none of that mattered. Not anymore. I was gone. Gone without bitterness. Gone without regret. Gone with clarity. Some stories end with fire. Others end with silence. Mine ended with transformation. Months later, as I walked into the headquarters of the initiative I now co-led, with my name listed clearly on the founding documentation, I paused at the glass doors. A thought crossed my mind. Not anger. Not revenge. Only recognition. They tried to erase me. And in doing so, they made space for the version of me that no longer accepted erasure as a condition for success. I entered the building with steady steps. My story did not end when Horizon Analytics failed to see me. My story began the moment I stopped asking them to. Thanks for watching this journey of calm strategy meeting corporate chaos. If you enjoyed this story and want more sharp, layered narratives just like it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss a drop. And if you are looking for something else to keep your day rolling, check out the playlist on screen now. There is plenty more where this came from.